everyone, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. As you can see by the title of this video, I'm going to be talking about all things Disneyland Paris. Now, if you guys are unaware, I went to Disneyland Paris back in June, and that video was just posted, so you haven't checked it out, go check it out. I'll put the link in the description. But yeah, I'm going to tell you all the ins and outs of Disneyland Paris, what I liked, what I didn't, and yeah, let's talk Disney. Talk about is the food. The food is the first thing I really noticed because, you know, love food, but also because it's very different. So for example, the first thing I noticed is I was expecting to be able to get a Mickey pretzel in Disneyland Paris, and apparently you can't. That's not a thing. So basically they have crepe carts and, if I'm remembering correctly, popcorn carts, I think. I just know that they had like crepes and then something else, but it wasn't like your traditional like churro, Mickey pretzel, like any of that. So basically I got a crepe, it was good, and I get it because like French culture, crepes, it makes sense, but I was kind of disappointed in the selection for like snacking, that they really didn't have much to snack on. Which brings me to the second thing I want to say about the food. The restaurants, they had like a decent amount of options to eat at within the park itself. The only problem is they all shut down at like 5 or 6, which I found very strange because in Disney World, everything's open pretty late. The only thing that was open later was Casey's Corner, and then I think one other quick service, maybe two other. One was like a barbecue and one was a Mexican restaurant. The line for Casey's Corner was so long. Like, I waited till the end to see the fireworks and I thought maybe then it would calm down. It was so bad. I was not about to stand in that line. So the fact that all the restaurants closed earlier, I feel like being on a guided tour, I kind of understood why. Now, I wasn't on a guided tour in Disneyland Paris, but I was on a guided tour in Paris. And one thing we like learned was that, you know, eating meals is a big thing. You like make an event out of it. You sit, you eat for 3 hours. So basically what I'm assuming is that most of those places were for lunch and they shut down around dinner time to encourage you to go out into like their form of like downtown Disney and sit down in a restaurant and have an actual meal, which is fine. But when you're like my group and you had one day to get everything done, you didn't want to do that. And then like I just said about snacking, there weren't many options for snacks. So our options were pretty much popcorn and crepes, and we didn't really want crepes because we had already had crepes that day, and popcorn's not really a meal. So I think what we ended up doing is going to the Mexican restaurant and ordered like nachos or something small. But yeah, so the dining wasn't the best as far as inside of the parks. Next up, I want to talk about the rides. So there were many rides that we did, and we actually got to do pretty much any ride we wanted to do and were really pressed to do. And there were only like a handful we didn't get done, and I think most of them were just under refurbishment, like Pirates of the Caribbean, so we couldn't even do them. But what I noticed about Disneyland Paris, and I've seen like, you know, rides on YouTube and stuff, and I've kind of figured this out beforehand, but most of the rides are kind of similar to like Disneyland and Disney World, but with a twist. So It's a Small World reminded me a lot of the Disneyland It's a Small World. But what I thought was interesting, because you're in, you know, a different country, they included like America in their It's a Small World. So they had like cowboy scenes, Hollywood sign, like movie stars. Like, it was really cool to see, and I really enjoyed that aspect. For example, Rock and Roller Coaster, once again, it was the same thing, but like a little different. So instead of like, you know how in Rock and Roller Coaster they have like the neon signs with lights, there weren't signs, it was just more a dark ride with like flashing strobe lights. So I thought that was cool that it was like different but the same thing. And then Tower of Terror was pretty much the same as Disneyland's. So like track layout and the theming was more towards Disneyland's that they used to have. But yeah, the rides were great. Overall, the wait times weren't that bad. I think the most we waited for was probably around 2 hours for the Crush coaster, but that was because it broke down when we were already at the front of the line. So in reality, like, the most we probably waited for a ride was close to an hour, which isn't that bad. Going along with rides, I want to talk about proximity. So for you guys who have been to Disneyland, you know that Disneyland and California Adventure are very close to each other. You can leave one park, walk across the way, and get to the next one. So I knew that Disneyland Paris was like that, but I don't think I was mentally prepared for how close it actually was. When you walked in past like downtown Disney to the front gate, it was like Disneyland, and then right off to the next corner was the Studios park. Like, they were so close, which was great because for us, we had this plan of, you know, you want to see Disneyland Paris first because it's Disneyland Paris. So we can go in, ride a ride or two, head over to the Studios park because it closed sooner, get a lot of rides done, and walk back to Disneyland. And the walk took maybe 2 minutes. Like, it didn't take any time at all. So I really appreciated how close things were, and it just made everything so much easier. And I really think that if it wasn't for them being that close, we wouldn't have gotten all the rides done. Because even in retrospect, like, yeah, California Adventure and Disneyland are very close, but even then, I feel like that took more time to get in and out of than it did in Disneyland Paris. The next thing I want to talk about isn't really gonna take long to talk about, but it's the merch. I wasn't blown away by their merch. Usually when you go to like Disney World or Disneyland, they have tons of pins with like Disneyland, Disney World, like different. I just didn't get that from Disneyland Paris. Anything Disneyland Paris, you had like 2 or 3 designs to choose from, and that was about it. I actually didn't even end up getting a shirt because the only shirt I kind of liked, I was afraid it was gonna shrink and not look right because it was like kind of a crop top, but kind of not. It was like an awkwardly fitting shirt. But every shirt I saw, I was like, this isn't, like, they might have been cute, but they didn't say Disneyland Paris. So in my opinion, I was like, well, I get it. So if you watch my Disneyland Paris haul, which I will also link in the description, I had a lot of pins, I had some Tsum Tsums, I got my dad a shirt, but like, ultimately there wasn't that much merch to choose from, which was really disappointing because as someone who hopes they'll go to Disneyland Paris again, but can't really guarantee it, I really wanted like more Disneyland Paris things to bring back that like said Disneyland Paris. So that was my only thing with like the merch that I didn't really care for. This next one is kind of just a random thought, but the Studios park for Disneyland Paris was so reminiscent of old like Hollywood studios. When you guys go in, I don't know if you guys have ever been, but when you walk through the main building, there are just like kind of like painted on pictures of like old Hollywood, and like they still have somewhat like Streets of America kind of deal. They have like facades of buildings, like they still have a backlot tour. Like that blew my mind. That was so much fun. Like, I missed Hollywood Studios backlot tour. So although I wouldn't say that their backlot tour was like better or worse, I would say it's pretty much the same, although they did have an extra scene that like had pyrotechnics and everything, which was cool. Back to the old Hollywood theme. It's just that park, like parts of it, yes, look like the Hollywood studios we know now, like Toy Story Land, you know, got all the new attractions like Pixar, but a lot of it was still very reminiscent of like old Hollywood studios. And Hollywood Studios, it's never been my favorite park because Epcot's always been my favorite, but it's definitely always been my like second, like right up there with Epcot. Like I've loved Hollywood Studios forever, and I feel like as time has gone on and the park has like evolved, I don't like Hollywood Studios as much as I used to, just because it's not what I used to love about it, like the old theming and stuff. So I was in heaven in the Studios park because it reminded me so much of old Hollywood Studios. Next up, of course, I have to talk about the fireworks because Disney fireworks are amazing, and of course, just like any other Disney fireworks show, they were amazing. And we actually went on D-Day. So they had special fireworks for D-Day before the actual like show. Forget what their fireworks show is called, but I wouldn't, oh, of course, how could I forget what it's called? It was called Illuminations because I was like, Illuminations? Like Epcot? Like what? But it was good. I just can't say that it was better than Happily Ever After or Wishes or any of the other fireworks shows I've seen. I definitely think any fireworks show in Disney World would top that one, just because that's my home park. That's, I guess, how I feel about that. But I did enjoy the fireworks. They were good. But other than that, I also don't think it helped that the people standing in front of us, so at the beginning they have this whole spiel that's like, don't hold up selfie sticks, don't hold up GoPros with like 50-foot long sticks. As this is being said, the guy in front of us is literally putting one up. And at first I was like, okay, maybe there's like a language barrier, but they said it in like 5 different languages. So definitely they understood what was happening. They just wanted to get good footage. So they were kind of blocking us for a little bit of it, but then we moved around them. But yeah, so fireworks show was good, but not as good as Disney World. If there's one major thing that I did not like about Disneyland Paris, it was the fast pass system. Now, I get it, part of this is my fault, but I was not aware that fast passes were still like a free thing in Disneyland Paris, because when you buy your tickets, they really push upon you to get fast pass, like one tier of fast pass, at least something. So I didn't realize that it was kind of like Disneyland, where they have kiosks that you get like paper fast passes from, and you can ride rides that way. Now granted, you gotta run over to different places to get fast passes. It takes up a lot of time. So I understand why buying fast passes is more convenient. And in my situation, I probably would have still bought fast passes, but it kind of made me mad because I bought the fast passes because I thought there was no other way to get fast passes. If you know to bypass it, and you're going for multiple days, I would bypass it and just go get the paper fast passes, especially depending on the time you go, because like I said, we went in June and it wasn't even that busy. So definitely if you're going for a longer period of time, don't pay for fast passes, because I don't necessarily think it's worth it. All right, so lastly, I want to talk about like the highlights of my trip, the things that I loved the most. So first of all, I want to start by saying, of course, like I said, the backlot tour, loved that. But also I was just thinking, it's not on my list, but Space Mountain, I don't want to say that this was like my favorite, but I want to say it was the most shocking to me, because spoiler alert, if you don't want to know what this Space Mountain in Disneyland Paris is like, then fast forward a bit. You start outside, which at first I thought was kind of strange. And then not only is there like a launch, but there's like an intense launch. And I'm thinking this is like most Space Mountains. But once I got into the car, like the actual train, I realized that was probably not correct, because you had actual restraints. So soon I realized that it was a roller coaster more than like a wild mouse that actually went upside down and did corkscrews and like all that fancy stuff. So it was a lot different than what I was expecting, but it was fun. Other than that, some highlights for me was the dragon under the castle, because there's no other park that has that. So I think it's really cool that you can go under and see this like dragon. Granted, it doesn't take long, but I thought it was still pretty cool to see. Crush Coaster was probably my favorite ride there, and I think it was my favorite just because it's so different than what any other Disney park has. It wasn't a spin on another ride or taking a ride in a different direction. It was like its own thing. So I don't know, and maybe it was so amazing because I had to wait 2 hours for it and I was just ready to ride it at that point. But I thought that it was really fun. The theming was really cute, and it was just an overall like really family friendly, fun roller coaster. Of course, what would this be without me saying Tower of Terror, because Tower of Terror is my favorite ride, so I'm gonna love it no matter where I go. Once again, loved that there was like tiny little pieces that are a little different, but ultimately same Tower of Terror that I know and love, and I was so grateful that I got to ride it in a different park. This next one is one that I'm so excited to say that I love, because we're getting it in Epcot soon, which is the Ratatouille ride. I had heard great things about it, and when I asked a friend what to ride, she said Crush Coaster, Ratatouille, those were 2 that I had to do. And I am so glad I got to ride Ratatouille before it came to Epcot, because now I know what to expect, and it's amazing. I knew it was like a Transformer kind of ride, like if you've ever been to Universal in Orlando, or I think they even have it in California, you know that they have the Transformer ride where you sit in the cars and it's like you're in the movie. I loved it. I thought it was so cute, and the theming was so spot on, and between like there being like, you know, little giant tables and stuff, aside from just the screens you're looking at, it made it so immersive, and I'm a huge fan of Ratatouille, and I just loved it. And then last on my list for like rides would be Phantom Manor. I really like Haunted Mansion, and I was told in line that Phantom Manor was apparently like the scariest of all of the different Haunted Mansion like rides. And I didn't really believe it, and I got on it, and I can kind of see where that comes from. It's not a scary ride, but I definitely think it's the most intense out of all of them. But I just love how different it was. Once again, like the graveyard scene, very different, but so immersive, and I loved it. Other than that, for highlights, most of my highlights were rides, because that's pretty much was our goal, was to ride all these rides, you know, get some food, shop a little bit, and be done. We didn't really get a chance to do any of the parades or anything, but I've seen videos of the parades and they look really cool. So I definitely want to go back to Disneyland Paris eventually, because I feel like there was still so much that I didn't get to do that I would still love to do. Definitely want to go there. But before I do that, I definitely want to try to make it overseas to do Tokyo Disneyland, Hong Kong, and of course, Shanghai. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe. Also, comment down below if you've ever been to Disneyland Paris and what your favorite thing was or what you thought. Or if you've been to any other Disney International Park and you have like tips for like me when I go / if I go, but I say when because I know eventually I'm gonna make it happen. So thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.